Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul Elam with a voice for men. And once again, I'm sitting here in front of the camera, talking out into the ether, into the world, into the great big void of men's issues. And this time I am sitting here with the now elusive Steve Brule. Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Hey, Paul. Why elusive?
I don't think we're even on the same continent anymore, Steve. Well,
I don't know how that works. I'm in the Caribbean. Is that it's not it's an island, but it is North America, isn't it? The Caribbean?
I don't know.
South America?
Who knows? One of the Americas. I mean, anyways, close enough, I guess. But, those of us in the men's movement have noticed there was a long stretch there with no Fiamingo files and not hearing much from Steve Brule, who is in my opinion, the official documentarian of the men's movement.
Wow. Thank you, Paul.
I'm going to ask, so for everybody else's edification and mine, what's been going on, Steve?
Well, I guess the biggest story, and I tried to kind of touch on this in the last vlog, the vlog entry, which is really my first vlog entry that I intend to do regularly. A lot of changes in my life, so with the separation and divorce and sale of the house and whatnot. I don't live in Kingston anymore, and I don't have permanent dwelling. I don't have a permanent place to call home. So I'm looking for cheaper way to live, cheaper place to live. That's hopefully more friendly towards men.
That was the first thing that entered my mind the first time that we talked about your situation, where you're at. You're a single guy, no ties on you. You have decided and did decide a long time ago that the route of corporate slavery was not for you. Obviously, the route of marriage is not for you. And here you are now down in the Dominican Republic. Isn't there like a lot of American, Canadian expatriates that you, maybe even British or whatever, that you run into down there who, I think you said in your last video, guys that probably never heard the word MGTOW, but that's what they're living?
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of guys like that here. Almost every guy here is like that I've met. But I just want to comment on a couple of things, just that you quickly mentioned there. I'm a single guy. I'm not divorced yet. I'm separated, but I've been separated for about 5-6 years, and it's an amicable separation. I don't want to leave the impression that this was some kind of disastrous marriage, but I mean, that's a whole other topic that at some point I'll probably will talk about. But
and I hope I wasn't coming across that way, because I've met her. She's a nice person. That wasn't my intent if it sounded that way.
No, I didn't. I just felt I should clear that up too, because we're on good terms, and and I would say this to guys there. I'm not really against marriage per se, but I do think that the marriage contract as it exists today is drastically screwed up, and it's a bad deal for men, legally speaking. But
well, that's another way of saying you're against marriage, Steve.
Well, yes. But I want to be clear that I do think that a long-term relationship between men and women is really a healthy way to go, and as a sort of committed relationship. I just think that the marriage deal for men today, in our time and day, and I'm not a historian, I don't know if it was ever any better, but it's not a good deal for men today. And in my situation with my wife that we're separated from, that's soon to be divorced, it hasn't gone that bad it's not that bad an outcome for me, but that's because she's a reasonable person. If she wasn't a reasonable person, it could have been, of course, a disastrous outcome. It could be a disastrous outcome. but that's another topic. I am going to get around to talking about my own situation as it relates to the topic at hand, because it's the closest situation to me. But to get back to your main point, yeah, here the Dominican Republic is a place that a lot of guys are, well, a lot of guys in the world are looking for a cheaper way to live and a freer way to live. And Dominican Republic offers a sizable portion of that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. I know that the economy is such. I think I heard you mention either to me personally or on one of your videos that the cost of living in the DR is about half of what it was where you were in Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I would say half. If you budget for half of what you pay in Canada, you will live better here for half the
okay.
price.
So it's
Okay.
probably a little bit more than twice the deal.
Yeah, it's a little less than half the price if you want to live sort of comparably. But like I'll give you an example. You can get a tiny little kind of one-bedroom apartment here in Costanbar, where I'm staying right now, for about $400 US per month. And that's not air conditioning, mind you. And for 6 months of the year, that's not a problem. 6 to 8 months of the year, that's not a problem. There's 2 or 3 months when that might be a problem for a lot of people. But for 6 months at minimum, the temperature here is not that hot. 6 to 8 months. And that apartment is tiny, but if you go up even another $100 or another $200 a month, you're going to get air conditioning. You're going to get 2 or 3 bedrooms. And if you hit $1,000 a month, you're getting a nice damn place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Now, this presumes that you're paying it for 12 months. The shorter your time period, the higher the monthly rate you're going to pay. For instance, that a place you're going to pay, say, $500 a month for, if you're there 12 months a year, you're going to pay $1,000 a month for, at least, if you're going to be, say, 6 months or less.
Okay.
You will pay double for shorter stays. And if you're going to stay here for 1 or 2 weeks, you'll pay quadruple. So that $500 apartment might cost you $500 a week.
Oh, wow. Okay. So long term is definitely cheaper.
Yeah, if you're looking to get away for a week or two in the winter, it's kind of a good deal, but it's still cheaper than most other getaway for a week places, but it's not super cheaper. But where the real savings come in is if you're looking for a place to live, say, longer than 4 months at a time.
Tell us a little bit about the culture down there. I'm sure it's a drastic difference from where you were in Canada. What's it like?
Well, that's a big open question, and I am learning more every single day. It's quite different. Now, I'm by no means an expert at all, but one of the driving things here is it's poor. It's a poor country, and I would say probably upwards of 50% of the population lives in like what you would describe as extreme poverty, and another 30% of the population lives in what you describe as poverty. There's a very small middle class and a really tiny upper class.
So when you say extreme poverty, we're talking dirt floors, no electricity, that sort of thing.
Some, yeah. There's a lot of that, but a lot of them will be concrete floors, but there won't be any windows, say, in the house, and there'll be sort of flat walls that you can see gaps in and whatnot. And these are people that say $10 is something that would be considered a lot of money for them, a huge amount of money. And the working poor, which constitutes probably 70% of the population. Now, I'm just pulling these figures out of my head, so it's just a lot. There's a lot of working poor, and the weekly wage is about between 1,500 and 2,500 pesos per week. And to give a perspective on that, the 1,000 pesos is about 20 bucks. So you're talking about 25 to $25 to $40 a week.
So you could actually go down there. I mean, depending on what it was you were doing, and you could have an employee for $40 a week.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
In fact, if you pay them $40 a week, you're probably on the high side.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people do that.
And the reason I'm asking this is because there is always, if you go back all through the literature, the MGTOW literature, the even the men's rights literature, dating back as far as it goes on the internet, you'll see this conversation always on the periphery or sometimes in the mainstream of it about getting off the grid and getting out of corporate slavery and figuring out ways to live more, more according to your desire for freedom than enslaving yourself to employment and work and having to make a whole lot of money. And that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because you're down there doing that right now.
I'm exploring it, and I'm learning a lot as I go. I'm paying on probably the high side of what I've described. I'm paying well under $1,000 US a month. Which is well under what I'd pay in Canada.
Oh yeah.
But then again, I got 2 bedrooms, and I've got air conditioning, and I've got Wi-Fi and electricity, everything included. Everything included. And I'll tell you what I'm paying. I'm paying $700 a month. I've got 2-bedroom apartment. It's got Wi-Fi and internet included, high speed. It's got air conditioning, electricity, everything, gas for cooking, everything included.
That's ridiculous.
And it is. It's very cheap. And it's not only that, it's a gated little kind of complex. And there's a swimming pool that's kept nicely maintained. And there's a whirlpool that's elevated way up where you can sit in the whirlpool, and you can look out over the ocean. The ocean is about 500 meters away down the hill, and you can look out there and watch the cruise ships go by and stuff like that. You can sit and have a beer in the whirlpool, and all that's included.
Okay.
I have to say, it's a pretty nice lifestyle for the price. It's if you wanted to get this lifestyle in the U.S., I think you probably have to quadruple the price.
Oh, I'm sure, and maybe more.
And maybe more. I mean, I don't even know where you can get a place where you've got access to a whirlpool, where you can see the ocean, sit, have a beer, and then it's secured. My little complex, there's 30 cameras running 24 hours a day for security. Okay.
Speaking of that, let me ask you a question about that. And this is a 2-part question. What is the relationship like between expats down there and the authorities, or people from Canada, North America, whatever, that come down there and stay long term? How are you treated by the authorities?
That's a really, really complex question. In general, the authorities are in favor of gringos, and by gringos, that's everybody that's not Dominican here.
Right.
So any foreigner it's a generic term, you're a gringo. But in general, they like it because gringos come with money, and gringos generally don't cause a lot of trouble.
Right.
They're generally here to live a nice life, enjoy the nightlife. A lot of the guys enjoy the nightlife here, and to drink cheap beer, have a relaxing time on the beach. So in that sense, the authorities they're pretty comfortable with that. And gringos tend to tip. Right. And it's a good idea to tip. Because let me put it in perspective. Even the police here don't make any money. Hardly
Right.
any money. Like they're living on a shoestring. I heard one guy told me that the police have to check out their 1 or 2 bullets they get for their shift when they then to put them in their gun, and then they have to check them back in at the end
Oh
of the
man.
shift.
Oh,
They're
God, I
they're
hope that's
they're
not
counting
true. I
bullets.
hope
Count,
I hope that's an urban myth.
it could be an urban myth, but I wouldn't be surprised because there really isn't very much money. We did a fundraising movie night for the security of this community here, and I was involved in helping with the movie night, just serving beers and stuff and collecting money for the security people. And it's not a lot of money collected, but it makes a big difference, you know.
Mhm.
And the security guards here, they ride around. There's 2 guys on a Honda 150 motorcycle. And so you're going to see 2
Two
security
guys on
guys
one motorcycle?
on one motorcycle. They
Okay.
can't give a security guys each a motorcycle. There's just nowhere near enough money for that. And you'll see this often here. You'll see 2 guys with sawed-off shotguns riding on a tiny little motorcycle. And that's the military or the police or the security or whatever. There's several different branches of this. So there is not much money. And I've been asked for donations from the police on the street, and they're polite about it. There's not threatening or anything, but they'll explain to you, you know, they got to buy milk for their kids or whatever. And, you know, there's a truth to it. And they'll be very happy to take 100 pesos, which is like $2 American.
Let me go ahead and interject something here, a piece of advice from somebody, meaning me, that has never even been to the Dominican Republic. If you find that offensive, if you go down there, I do not suggest that you get in the cop's face and tell them you're not giving him any fucking money. Probably not a good idea.
No. But on the other side of it, I did walk away one time. I just friendly said,
Okay.
"Oh, see you later," and they didn't do anything. They were just they're regular people. They don't want trouble either. Okay. But the reality is that even the police are poor.
And how does that extend to the local population? How's that the interrelationship between the local population, non-authority, just regular Joes on the street, and the gringos?
I'm not clear on the question. How what relates?
Is there friction there? Are they as welcoming as the cops? How's the relationship?
Well, I wouldn't like. Of course, there's friction. There's friction when you put 2 people in the same space. You're going to occasionally have friction. You'll have the friction here, like you'll have everywhere else. But there are dangers here that are specific to that are particular to this place too. And I guess to get into that's kind of a long conversation, and it kind of context dependent where you are, what time of day, what place you're doing. You have to learn a bit about how to not get in trouble here.
Okay. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Okay, let me see if I can come up with an example here. If you go into sort of a really poor barrio at night on a Saturday when everybody's drunk.
Are there people that actually need to be told this?
Yeah, there are actually.
Okay.
Even here there are.
I knew the answer to that.
There are, and people do this. And because there are some dangerous barriers, especially around Puerto Plata, where the port of Puerto Plata, right next to the port of Puerto Plata, there's a very dangerous barrio there. A barrio is like a neighborhood. It's a word for a neighborhood. And in there's some drug gangs. So this is like if you go in, imagine going to Detroit and just saying, you know something, I'm just going to wander Detroit in the middle of the night, or, at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night when everybody's drinking on a Saturday night. And you're going to wander off the main strip in Detroit. I mean, holy crap. I would rather go into that dangerous barrio here than go into those neighborhoods of Detroit. Okay. Seriously, it's dangerous, but it's not as dangerous as those neighborhoods in Detroit. And you know that, right?
Wait a minute. Don't tell me not to go into bad neighborhoods. Tell muggers not to mug me.
There you go. There you go. But there are other dangers as well. uh, let's see how to get into an example. There's dangers, and there are gringos here who exaggerate those dangers because some specific examples of what went wrong, they make good stories, right? Good bar time stories. So if you come down here into a bar, one of the first things you're going to hear, and when I say a bar, I'm talking about these open air beachside things, right? They're little
Right.
wooden shacks, and not shacks, but they're comfortable, they're nice, they're clean, they're safe, they're everything like that. Don't worry about it. But you're going to run into some guys who've been here like 25 years, and they're going to tell you the 3 terrible stories that they ran into in 25 years, okay? And as you know, one person whispers in the other person's ear. 25 years later, that story is a lot worse than it really was.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
believe that.
But at the same time, you do have to watch. Like anywhere you go in the world, you got to watch your back.
You called it El Barrio. Is Spanish the national language down there?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Spanish is the language of Dominican Republic.
All right. So it is a Spanish-speaking nation. Are there a fair amount of locals who speak English? They're the merchants, things like that.
You know, a lot less than I would have thought. A lot less. I mean, because Dominican Republic is well known as a tourist destination. I'm sure you've heard of it as a tourist destination. Everybody's heard of Punta Cana, and you've heard of Puerto Plata. Those are 2 large tourist destinations. Punta Cana being the sort of the upscale location, and Puerto Plata being the sort of I was going to say common man, but it's actually more economical destination, you know. But there's not as nearly as much English spoken here by in the Punta Cana. I don't know about because I haven't actually been there to Punta Cana yet. It's about a 7 or 8 hours ride from here.
So oh wow, I didn't know anything was 7 or 8 hours from anywhere.
Well, keep in mind that you rarely can travel more than you often can't travel much more than 50 kilometers an hour, right?
Oh, okay.
You're not talking freeways. There's not a lot of freeways here. I don't think there is one. But there's some good roads. But driving is a whole other topic here, Paul. It's a whole topic of its own. Seriously, the Dominican Republic is rated in 2017 by the WHO, the World Health Organization, as the 2nd most dangerous country in the world to drive.
Oh, really?
2nd, behind Eritrea. So in other words, it's more dangerous than Iran, Iraq, Cairo, all of those other big cities, Chicago or whatever, Boston. I've driven in Rome. I've driven in Rome. Rome.
Oh man, I've driven in Italy, and if it's worse than Italy, I don't want to go. I'm sorry.
Well, but I'm going to qualify that, and the reason the World Health Organization.
Did you say World Whore?
It's a tongue twister. But the reason is that their statistics come out by number of deaths per whatever number of drivers or whatever. But when you come here and you see the risks that drivers take, you won't be surprised at the number of deaths. And the very simple way to cut down your risks of dying or getting injured or in an accident here is that don't make those types of decisions. Okay.
Oh, so there's a lot of Darwin Award recipients.
Yeah. And people do drive as if they're indestructible on motorcycles too. And that's another thing. Motorcycles here are like, they're like a swarm of flies. You can get in at an intersection and you swear to God, you don't know how possibly this can ever work out. But the motorcycles are going and coming in every freaking angle like a swarm of flies. The first few times I ran into that, it was like, holy crap, I'm like white knuckled, right? But having said that, there's a rhyme and a reason to it, like a rhyme, a rhythm to it. And you've got to, listen, this idea of driving down the road and drinking a cup of coffee while you drive somewhere, this is a North American and a Western thing. You don't do that here. It's a sport, man.
But come on, Steve. I might never get another chance for a cup of coffee again.
But having said that, too, I bought a motorcycle. I've ridden a motorcycle in probably the most dangerous place in second most dangerous place in Dominican Republic, Puerto Plata. And I think Santo Domingo is worse, but there are fewer motorcycles in Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo has like 2 million people. And what was I going to say? I think the key is, and I pondered on this a long time about how I'm going to get around in this country. I didn't drive here or rent a car or anything for about 6 or 8 weeks before I even ventured out of the gated community with a car, driving it myself, because I was so freaking scared to death from all the stories I heard. And I think it's wise to pay attention to these stories, because there are some horror stories. They're real. They're not lying about these horror stories. And I could get into that, because not only the accident, but the consequences and how to get out of trouble as a gringo in an accident here. That's a whole other story. It does not follow the normal rational rules you're used to. Okay. But having said that, when I traveled around the first almost 2 months here of total time, I went in other people's cars, and I went in taxis and public taxis, and I went on the guaguas, which are little microbuses, like the way the Dominican people travel. And I went on motoconchos, which a motoconcho is a motorcycle that's a taxi. And you just get on the back of this guy's motorcycle and, okay, forget your ideas about Western safety. You don't need a helmet. Forget it, man. You don't need a helmet. People drive around on motorcycles in bare feet, and they'll put 6 people on a motorcycle and a woman carrying a newborn baby. And the driver will be drinking a beer. Like, forget safety, man. Forget it.
All right.
Okay, and that alone explains why the statistics are so high. Okay, and if you do decide to come here, even for a visit or whatever, keep in mind that you can make better decisions than the average person is making. You don't have to make bad decisions like that. Okay, so don't get caught up in and this is another danger. You can get caught up on the whole freestyle lifestyle, and it's great. You can do whatever you want. But you know something? Some of those things are pretty risky. So think about it first, right? And I ride a motorcycle, and when I leave the gate here, I wear a bicycle helmet right now, and I'm looking for a full face helmet to buy here, and I haven't found one to fit. And it's not as easy to get here as things are in North America. So I want one that fits me properly. But I have a bicycle helmet for now. So when I go on the main roads, I'm wearing a bicycle helmet, and I probably have more protective gear, and I wear little kind of finger cut off hand gloves in case there's a little spillover, and I have a jean jacket for kind of road rash or whatever. And I also kind of, I think I don't do as many, say, risky decisions as a lot of the other riders I see doing. But inside Costa Bar, where you're not going much faster than you'd ride a bicycle. I mean, I ride with sandals and no helmet and just this hat here. And if I'm going down to the beach for a beer or whatever, I'll just get on my bike. I'm not going very far, whatever. You can't do that in North America. And I have to say this, North America, I was going to say the term pussified, but anyways, I'll pick a different term.
Too late,
here.
You already did.
I already did. But I think we're too risk averse. I get it. Okay, I get it. There are risky things and risky choices in life. But there is something lost. This is one of the things I'm finding out. There's something lost in life when you put too much. In our North America and Canada, US, Canada is probably worse than the US. Our entire focus is on safety, as if the only important thing in life is that you are safe until you die.
Well, it's half-assed that way. I mean, what we see now is guys who'd say, "Well, I would never ride a bike without a helmet," but then they'll turn around and get married.
Well, that's true too. I think the whole risk situation with marriage hasn't sunk into a lot of guys yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of denial about it.
Yeah.
Look, I want to talk more about DR, but I'm also interested in how this is impacting your work. You just released a new Flamingo file. I was really glad to see Janice back. And then you released another video where you're talking to the camera. And I will link both of those, by the way, for those of you who've been away for a while. Look down below in the description area, and I'll give you a link to both of those videos so that you can see what I saw. But how are you gonna continue to do that work? What is the plan for your documentary work, if you don't mind?
Oh yeah, sure, for sure. I'm still working out the details, but for the documentary work, for instance, for finishing up the story, your biography, as people know who are familiar with you and familiar with my channel, that I'm still in the middle of the Who is Paul Elam biography. So and then the other one I mentioned in that video is Alison Tiemann and her story with the Honey Badger Brigade at Calgary Expo.
Right.
Very, very, very interesting story. I think people are going to be fascinated with how hard they tried to destroy her. But all of these things require me to whether I live in Canada or I live here or I live in China or whatever, I still have to travel to those locations to gather that sort of footage. There's not a lot of difference in terms of the cost of me going to locations, no matter where I am. I mean, if I'm in other side of the world, it's, you know, the flight costs are higher. Yeah. and the ICMI coming up in London. So I'm right now, I'll be here for less than 6 months in the Dominican Republic total. This is my first sort of long-term stay away from Canada, and the winter is the best time to leave, obviously. So I don't know. I can't say I know where I'll be, but I think in terms of the pursuing the documentary work and doing the Flamingo file, it doesn't really matter. Right now, Janice, through the generosity of viewers, we did a fundraiser and she has a little studio. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we have enough to do the Flamingo file from Janice's basement, and she uploads those files to the Google Drive, and I download them here and edited, for instance, the last couple of Flamingo files. I edit them here and then upload them to YouTube from here.
Oh, how wonderful. I didn't know you had were that far along with making sure that content continues. Those are great, great talks. And I was hoping they were going to continue.
Yeah, and to finish up on the whole documentary thing, as if anybody's made, say, more detailed documentaries, it's very rare that you can just be at your hometown and do a documentary. If you're going to be a topic that's, say, broader than your hometown, you're going to have to go somewhere. So you're going to leave and travel, and you're going to incur all the same expenses almost no matter where else you live in the world. And then once you've collected that material, there's a huge amount of time sitting alone in a dark room editing. And you got to be a little bit crazy to do this. Because and I'll say this, like the Flamingo files aren't of the same kind of a regular documentary, but when you're in a say the Red Pill movie, I can imagine how what Cassie went through in editing that. Every time I've gone through a bit of an edit that's, say, I'm not sure where the story is going, I'm just learning the story as I'm editing it, I go a little crazy in the head, because you get into this story and you got to find a way to bring it out, to get out of it, to make it all make sense.
And that often means more footage, right?
Well, it means a lot of time going over the footage. Like once you collect the footage, and then when you're collecting footage and talking to people, oftentimes, like not everything that you see and hear sinks in right away. And it starts to sink in more as you review the footage and as you watch it over. It's like some segments you'll watch over a dozen times, you
You
know?
know, that's interestingly enough how Cassie J said that she ended up getting red pilled in this process of making the movie was in the editing.
Right.
That
Well, that's a good point.
you had to listen to people over and over and over again in the editing, and that's when a lot of these key points really started sinking in on her.
Yeah, things don't sink in the first time you hear them. And I think that's pretty obvious to people, especially anybody who's went through, say, university or whatever. Like, you don't absorb everything sitting in class. You know, it has to be reinforced. You have to go over it. You have to think about it and mull it over. And in the case of editing a film or a documentary, you're trying to present a story to the audience. I mean, you can't just haphazardly drop things in there. You'll lose your audience immediately.
Yeah,
you know,
the Sarkeesian factor comes to mind. Oh man, what a goddamn disaster that was.
And well, yes, and it has to be a disaster. And I think most people realize that editing a movie is not an easy thing. But when editing a movie, you have to realize as the editor that this may be the first time your audience is ever coming across this. They don't know where this is going. They don't know where this story is going at all. So you have to guide them. And in order to guide them, you have to understand the story first. And when you understand the story, then you have to, that's not the end of it. Then you have to go and find the material you've gathered that explains the parts of that story that can help guide your audience along. And that, when you're talking about a documentary, is extraordinarily difficult because you've gathered these pieces of information at different places, different times. And for instance, in the Red Pill, I think Cassie collected material for 3 years. Was it?
Well, it was 2.5. I think it was 2.5 years of filming and a year of editing.
So there you go. There's 2.5 years of footage to go through there.
Yeah.
And you have to bring your mind to all those places, and you have to bring that into your mind, and then sense, okay, what do I need to tell the audience in order to bring them along the next step of this story? It's a tough job. But bringing this back to your original question as to living in the Dominican Republic, I can edit from anywhere. Absolutely anywhere. A dark room with a computer is a dark room with a computer. Yep. That's all it is. It don't matter if it's in the North Pole or if it's in Cambodia or Dominican Republic.
But you do have to travel.
You do have to travel
to gather material.
Gather material.
Absolutely. Or you got to bring. That may be a thing to do, Steve. You want to continue the documentary work on me? You may need to fly me down there to the to the high end retreat.
I think you should come down here anyway. At least a visit. This may be a location to have one of these sort of retreats.
Don't put it past me. And actually, don't think that I haven't. One of the things I've considered about in preparing, and by all means, let me be clear, it is Mike Buchanan of Justice for Men and Boys that is doing the preparation for the next ICMI in July of this year back in London. I have been scoping out possibilities for other conferences, other meetings, both in places like the Dominican Republic where you are and in Eastern Europe. Because Western Europe and North America are so damned expensive to try to get anything done.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll give you an example here. You can rent for a week here a 6-bedroom, very nice house with a pool and a gated community and whatnot. 6 bedrooms with king or queen beds in them. And when I say nice, I mean granite countertops, marble floors, everything you'd want, every bedroom with an ensuite. And that will cost you, I'm trying to remember exactly here because I don't want to mislead you. But I think you can get that for in the order of 1,500 for a week, maybe
Oh, wow.
2,000, maybe 2,000 at the most. And I'm talking a luxury place. Now, keep in mind, I know I talked about the cheap way to live here before, but most of the cheapness of living here is in living here long term.
Right.
Okay, because the stuff that's up for rent on a weekly basis, or even up to a month you start to get the break, but a weekly basis you're paying what is the market is tourists, and
Of
the tourist
course. Yeah.
market is a different market, right?
So, in terms of the guys that are doing kind of what you're doing down there, going down there to live based on how inexpensive it is, and probably wanting to get away with some elements of their culture. I know that there's, a lot about my own country right now I would love to get away from. But what is this crowd like? Are these guys like retirees, or um, are they escapist, or what are these fellas doing down there?
Yeah, that's a good question, Paul. There isn't a single thing. There's all of that. There are rich people looking that own places just to get away, and I mean really rich people. There are guys that are running away, that maybe can't go back to their country because they have trouble back there. There are guys that are retired. There are guys that are working. One guy I know, he's running this is a character. There's one thing for sure that I'll say is unique here, or interesting here, not unique, but there's a lot of characters here, serious characters that are really interesting, really interesting people, as you can imagine. But one guy here, for instance, he runs a small blog, and he's Randy. He is his blog is about conspiracies, and he's a conspiracy theorist, and he's also he believes in the flat Earth idea. But I tell you, he's a nice guy. He's a really great guy. I like him. I don't believe in the flat Earth thing. I think that's it's really nonsense. But he does. And I've talked to him many times, and he's convinced the Earth is flat. And he makes his living doing his thing for his following of the Flat Earth Society, and he talked about other conspiracies too. He doesn't believe man has ever been to the moon, and all those kinds of stuff that you've heard about before. But he's living here not far from me in one of these small little apartments, and making a living doing his little thing on his computer, and he does his blogs. That's how he lives.
Is he happy?
He looks pretty happy to me.
I bet he is.
But I mean, every day, look, and I'm going to say this also, there's dangers here. And some of the dangers are not apparent. Like, I'm not talking about the dangers of being beat up. One of the biggest dangers I see here is that there's the temptation to go down to the beach bar and get drunk every day. That is probably the biggest danger here, because it's so tempting. It's right over there. Okay.
What are the women like?
Oh, there is variety as various as you would find in any country and any culture. You can't and if somebody asked you what are American women like, well, how would you answer that?
You really want me to answer that?
No, but I mean,
I think I spent the last 10 years answering.
No, but I mean, are they all the same for real? Are they really all the same?
Well, no, they're not all the same for real. Yeah, I get the thrust of your question, but there is this sort of expected standards for a particular culture. When I talk about American women, I say most of them are very self-aggrandizing, narcissistic, entitled, have unrealistic expectations of men, and frequently, because of their nature and because of the system, they can't be trusted. I mean, that is my impression. Are there exceptions to that? Hell, I've been living with one for 16 years. I know there's exceptions. I know it doesn't describe everybody. But in general speaking, yeah. So I'm going to ask you again, Brule, what are the women like down there?
Okay, and I'm going to get right to that answer. And because what you just described there is how the culture trains women to be.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly. And I've said that for 10 years too.
good,
I
good.
should clarify that. My problem is not with women. My problem is with what men and women do together to create the kind of women we have.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And of course, it's very different here. And it's no secret at all to anyone who knows anything about the Dominican Republic that there's a lot of prostitution here.
Okay.
Huge, huge amount of prostitution. I mean, you're going to be approached. You're going to be approached a lot. Some of the prostitution is like women who are literally, that's their whole thing. They want to get paid for sex, you know. There's another side to it. There are a lot of women who are looking for a nice guy with money, just exactly like in almost everywhere else in the world. They want a nice guy. They want a nice life. They want to improve their situation, and they know, and they'll look at gringos and they'll know that, you know, chances are a gringo has more money than other guys.
Yep.
So the reality is that if you're a gringo and you come here, you're going to get approached a lot.
Okay.
And I'm going to say some more. That doesn't end there, okay?
Yeah, because there is still the matter of that culture's attitude toward prostitution. I know that having spent time in Korea in my youth, in the 70s, prostitution was everywhere, very much like you just described. But the cultural attitude about prostitution wasn't anything like it is in the West.
No, people understand that everybody's poor.
Yep.
And there's an understanding here that, like, that woman that maybe is acting like a prostitute or is prostituting herself, she's got 2 or 3 kids at home. And she may be supporting her grandmother or grandfather. They're all counting on her to come home with money to put food on the table. Now, I don't want to harbor too long on the prostitution issue because
Okay.
the prostitutes can be a problem, and a lot of the serious prostitutes here who are hardcore, and there's a very big distinction here between women who are out, you know, looking for some sex for money and serious hardcore prostitutes. Some of them are really accomplished thieves. I mean, you're talking like very skilled. I had a chain on the beach stole right off my neck, and I didn't even feel it leave.
Oh,
and
wow.
like prostitutes come around me on the beach and just all hugging me up and down. Oh, you know, come with me, blah, blah, blah. And I say, no, I'm going back to my apartment, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden she says, okay, bye. Well, she said, okay, bye, because she knows she had my chain in her hand, you know?
Oh, man.
So, and
I've known you for years and always wearing that gold chain, and I see you're not wearing it now.
I'm not wearing now. Yeah, I don't have it. And it was a very, very, very difficult experience for me because that chain and the pendants that were on it were very, very significant to me. They weren't just decoration. But that's another topic for another video. But I do want to get back to the topic about the women here. And like everywhere else in the world, there are really true love relationships here. Don't think. I heard a lot of stories, and especially from jaded men who maybe went after a series of prostitutes and then decided that every woman was a prostitute. That's not true. You know, that's just not true. And I've met quite a few long-term married gringo, like mixed. In this community here, there is a mixture of Dominicans, gringos, and intermarriages, and all kinds of stuff right here. I see it every day. There's a lot of guys here married to Dominican women who are very happy, and they're Dominican guys married to gringo women here, and they've been married for 25, 30 years. And they're building their marriage, their family, their life like anybody else, anywhere else in the world is doing it.
Well, and part of that
having
problem,
all the same
honestly,
having all the
maybe
same problems too, eh?
Yeah,
Paul,
but
same
part of
problems.
that difference may be in that the infectious nature of feminism, of rampant disregard for men, may not have sunk its teeth in to the Dominican Republic near as much as it has in other more westernized nations.
It definitely has not. I
Okay.
absolutely say, without a question, it definitely has not. Okay. And some people will say that this is a patriarchal sort of male dominated culture. To a degree, there's some of that, but that does not tell the whole story. Women
Never
here have a
did.
lot of power. The women here
Yep.
have power, especially in the family. So, I mean, all of these topics, Paul, we are touching briefly on so many complex topics here that deserve like detailed treatment. Relationships between men and women in anywhere in the world. I mean, that is massively complex relationships there. And I know I'm saying this to a guy who knows this better than I do, but
I don't know.
I'll
It
say
doesn't hurt me to hear it.
the truth is, though, that there are differences. There are distinct differences here, and the absence of feminism is like a breath of freaking fresh air.
And see, that's worth a trip to the DR just to check that out, just
It's a breath.
to spend some time
It is
not
palpable
looking
on
over
the
your
street.
shoulder before you talk.
Paul, it's palpable on the street. It's palpable in your everyday life here. That, like, it's hard to describe. It's hard to put your finger on why. But, you know, you walk down the street in the US or in Canada, especially in Canada, in any city, and can you really ignore the fact that you're a white man and you're not really welcome?
Yeah, right.
Can you really ever forget that? Sitting in a coffee shop. I walked into a coffee shop in Montreal, a Starbucks, in fact, and this is about a year and a half ago. And I walked through that coffee shop, and I swear to God, I was walking through like the enclave of one of these university feminist organizations. The place was packed, but it was almost all 20 to 25-year-old young women working away on their computers, blogging away, yapping about what their stuff. And maybe it's just my imagination, but I imagine them to be, okay, Canadian university, 20 to 25-year-old women. What do you think they think about old white men, huh?
Oh, I think
What do you think?
we know what they think.
We know what they think. And
Yes.
the place there was probably, out of the, say, 80 to 100 people in that coffee shop, there was maybe 3 young guys and 1 old guy. Okay.
Yep. Hey, I've been that old guy before.
But let me put it this way. If you find a similar place here in the Dominican Republic as an old guy, out of the 80 women there will be 70 to 75 women looking at you with lust.
Oh, wow.
And these are not prostitutes. They do not see old men the same way that Western people see old men. They see old people as higher status, as higher value.
Oh, wow. That's
Typically what
interesting.
you might have seen many, and so you may have heard of in other cultures and many years ago. Because well, I don't know all the reasons for it, but I'll tell you this. When I was 35 years old in Canada, I felt older than I do 58 years old here in the Dominican Republic. And part of that is the way I'm treated. I'm not treated like I'm an unwelcome here.
Wow. Now that's worth a lot of discussion. We are unfortunately out of time for this talk, but I'd like to ask you if you're interested in maybe doing these on a semi-regular basis. Let me just check in with you down there in the Dominican Republic and expanding some of these discussions on what we've been talking about tonight.
Absolutely, Paul. Absolutely. And I just want to leave everybody with this one thought here, is that we touched on some complicated topics, and in no way is it possible to explain some of these things in any kind of meaningful way without some depth. So I would love the opportunity to explore the themes more deeply as I come to learn them more deeply. I've been in the Dominican Republic a total now of about 4 or 5 months, out over about 4 or 5 different visits. And I'm learning every day more about what's the truth here. And I'll also say this, if you've known somebody who's been here or lived here, there's a lot of scary stories. You should pay attention to them, but you shouldn't get scared from them. There's there's dangerous places everywhere in the world. But there's also a safe way to live everywhere in the world.
Roger that. Good, solid, sound thinking, Steve. Folks, if you're watching this, by the way, right after its release, it means you are a patron of my channel, of An Ear for Men on Patreon, or you're a supporter at makersupport.com. Either way, if you're watching this on first release, it's because you have chosen to support my work that I've been doing for the last 10 years and to help me do it into the future. And I just I'm releasing this early as kind of a thank you for that. Also, we've also started, I had a first monthly meeting, which was for last month that I actually had at the first of this month, but I'll be making an announcement soon. At the end of March, I'll be having another meeting for patrons and maker support only. We had a blast in the first one, and I'm going to be setting more of those up regularly. I want to encourage you, as always, if you're watching this, not only please come in, support me on Patreon, Maker Support, links below. I'm also putting links to Steve's Patreon below. Like I said, Steve is, in my opinion, he is the only documentary. Cassie J made a fantastic movie. She did a great, wonderful job at it. But Steve was the one with the footage he got outside of the Warren Farrell lecture, that protest, and so all the other many, many things, the Fiamingo files and all the other events that he's come to and filmed and gotten out to the world without charging anybody. We need this guy. This is the guy that's putting us on the record. This movement is getting put on the record by Steve Brule. And so there's a link below to his Patreon. If you think I'm an asshole and you don't want to give me any money, that's great. Go on over and give Steve Brule some support over on his channel. He could use it, and we need his work. It's very valuable. And with that, Steve, I'm going to give you the final word before we take it out.
Oh, my God, the final word. Stay tuned, folks, because there's more to come on Studio Brule. There's more to come on A Voice for Men and An Ear for Men. And the upcoming ICMI conference in London, England, I hope to get there to interview the speakers. I think, Paul, you're speaking there as well.
Yeah, but I'm not talking to you.
We'll see about that. And I hope to get there. So I'm going to have a fundraiser on that, because I will need to be funded to get to the ICMI 18 in London. That's Mike Buchanan's effort with the ICMI International Conference on Men's Issues in July in not London, England. But do you remember the name of the town?
It's in London. In
London?
Yes, it is.
It is in London.
It is in London.
I thought they had moved it.
Well, they had set it up for Birmingham at the football club there. And the social justice crowd came in and they pulled the rug out from underneath of Mike, but he did force a settlement. I am not privy to the terms of that. It was non-disclosure was a part of his agreement with them. But it was made right in the end, and we are all good to go in London town.
Awesome. Well, I hope to be there to be able to see you, talk to you, interview all of the speakers, including you. And folks, look at the Fiamingo file and look for Studio Brule for stories from the Dominican Republic as well.
All right, guys, that's it. It's been a lot of fun to talk to you, Steve, and we'll do this again. I want to hear more about life in the Dominican Republic for a guy down there on his own wits. And with that, we'll say goodnight to everybody and see you guys next time.
Good night.